we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys who confirmed the audio and visuals all working. I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to be talking about the 5 steps to keep your systems protected from ransomware. So we're going to be talking about how to survive any disaster with a proper BDR solution. You also see the Gartner logo on the screen here. Infoscale was a Gartner 2015 Cool Vendor in Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery. Also, we were listed on their 2016 Magic Quadrant as a visionary in disaster recovery as a service. So wanted to make just a few quick mentions of that. A couple of quick housekeeping announcements before we dive into the agenda. So I just wanted to first off introduce myself. My name is Carla Federigo and I'm the Director of Marketing at Infoscale. I also wanted to share my contact information with you. I'd love to chat with you more after the presentation. If anything comes up, please feel free to reach out to me. And then also you can join the conversation. You can follow us on Twitter at Infoscale. You can find us on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. We'd love to hear from you. I often get asked if there's a recording of this presentation. Yes, we are recording, and the video is going to be posted at infoscale.com/webinars within the next 24 hours. So you can always watch replay videos there at your leisure. And then a copy of the slides. Yes, you do have a copy of the slides. They're available now in the handouts section, should be just below the questions. So if you want to go ahead and grab the handouts, you have a copy of these slides. And there are also a couple of other pieces of information in there for you. There's a 2016 DRAS Attitudes and Adoption Report. We've got a couple of other things in there too that we thought would be helpful for you, a ransomware survival guide. So definitely check that out and grab the handouts. And then last announcement is just for questions. If you have questions during the presentation, just go ahead and post those in the questions tool within the software, and we are going to have a Q&A, so just go ahead and post those throughout the webinar. All right, so let's take a look at the agenda here. First, we're going to talk about some of the key trends that we've been seeing in 2016. We're going to talk about how to avoid ransomware, the 5 steps to keep your data protected, and then we're going to have our Q&A, and we will be joined by one of our senior SEs. And so any technical questions that you have, please go ahead and throw them at us. We will be able to answer those in the Q&A. All right, then let's go ahead and dive in. So here what we're taking a look at is every company relies on data and systems uptime for survival. And really this is because we've seen such wide globalization, and it's created a highly competitive market for both big and small businesses. So with these really competitive times, no business can afford to lose out on opportunities, on customers, on revenue, because of unplanned outages or because of ransomware. So every organization's IT system needs to be up and running at all times. There are simply no excuses. So implementing a proper business continuity and disaster recovery plan is really a must for every organization. Well, and if we don't, what's the cost and what are we risking? So this is what you have at risk if you don't. This is the calculated average cost per hour of downtime. So small companies lost over $8,000 per hour of downtime. And then on the other end of that scale, large organizations reported losses of over $600,000 per hour. But right there in the middle, you see the average overall downtime cost per hour. It's over $200,000. So consider what happens when your systems go down, even for an hour. You lose all communication with your business partners, your customers, your employees. How would you deal with a situation like that? And then, more importantly, do you know how much one of these unplanned outages or ransomware would cost you in terms of lost opportunities? So that's a really important question to ask. Can you really afford to shut down your business for a day or for even an hour? And that's where these stats come into play and are really helpful. You'll find more stats like these, more information in the 2016 DRAS Attitudes and Adoption Report. So that's in the handout, so you can go ahead and grab that now. All right, now if we realize what the risks are, then why hasn't everyone adopted a proper BDR, backup and disaster recovery solution? So here are the barriers that we found to adoption. This was in a survey of companies ranging from 100 to 5,000 employees, and most businesses said that they couldn't fail over to a second location. In fact, only 10% of the companies surveyed said that they could fail over within 15 minutes. So why haven't we all invested in failover? Well, the number one reason holding these companies back was the perceived cost of disaster recovery solutions. So it was just simply too expensive. And then after that, having insufficient IT resources and solution complexity were the next highest barriers. So again, these stats are all in the handout section. You can go ahead and grab a copy of that report. But we are going to talk about these more in the presentation. So we will cover cost, IT resources, solution complexity, and everything that we're mentioning here. All right, so historically, disaster recovery, it invariably means trade-offs. So you have, here on this scale, we're looking at cost along the bottom, and then we're looking at recovery time. So on one end of the spectrum, you can utilize tape, so off-site tape backup. It's cheap, as you can tell, but it takes days to recover. And there are other DR solutions along this continuum, but you still have to make the trade-off between speed and cost. You have cloud backup, appliance backup, and then you get into cold, warm, and hot site DR. You know, on the other hand, you do have hot site DR. The primary and secondary systems are running simultaneously. So the data is mirrored to the secondary server in real time, and both systems contain identical information. Now, it's extremely fast. So the recovery time, or RTO, can be measured in seconds. But look at how expensive it is. Now, what you really want is an affordable on-demand solution. So that's where DRAS comes in, Disaster Recovery as a Service. It lets you quickly reboot and virtualize VMs to keep your users productive while you fix the root cause of the outage. So right now, only the biggest companies can afford to fail over their systems, and it's leaving 68% of organizations using mere backup as a disaster recovery solution. So we're going to talk about cost in just a minute here, and we're going to talk about a few more of these issues, of course, that can get you a BDR solution that works for you and also works for your budget. Now let's take a look at the top causes of downtime. This chart kind of tells two different stories. On the left, we're looking at how pervasive downtime really is, and then on the right, the top causes. Now this won't sound surprising to most of you. On the left, what we're seeing is that 91% of data center managers experienced some downtime in the last 2 years. And 47%, so nearly 1 in every 2, experienced an outage this year. Then looking on the right, you see all the causes of downtime. Again, not surprising, hardware failure and human error together account for over 3/4 of all downtime. And then natural disasters account for less than 5%. But still, talking about disaster recovery, we want to consider those micro and macro disasters. And then, of course, we need to take ransomware into consideration as a cause of downtime as well. So here are some of the ransomware trends that we've seen in 2016. In the first quarter of 2016, almost 3,000 new malware modifications were reported. And we know that ransomware is getting activated by a user, so that end user lets it in and it starts modifying all the files on the system until a triggered message for a ransom demand comes in. And then if you get one of those ransom demands, paying it is going to involve some kind of e-currency or cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin. And once the hackers verify that payment, then they provide the decryptor software, and then the computer starts the long process of decrypting all your files. And that's where we see this second stat come into play here. 72% of ransomware victims were unable to access their data for 2 days. And that can take up to 5 days in other cases. And then we know that they're getting away with it because of the amount of money paid in ransom. So these are stats from the FBI. They reported over $200 million has been paid in ransomware in just the first 3 months of 2016. Now compare that with all of 2015 together, where the total was $25 million paid in ransom. And then this last step that we're looking at, three quarters, about 34%, 1/3 of SMBs fell prey to phishing emails in 2015. So that's where the problem sets in, is that just one end user can activate the ransomware, and then it spreads through networks and it can spread through the entire system. And that's how you have no idea for weeks or months. It's running slowly in the background, modifying all of the files on your system until you get one of those triggered ransom demands. And here's what those ransom demands look like. So just one single user can bring down an entire organization. Ransoms in the past started in the $300 to $500 range. If you can see this clearly on your screen here, the example in the back is showing $300 US to get that ransom paid. The one in the front here is saying you have 72 hours to pay the fine, otherwise you will be arrested. So these ransom demands have increased exponentially. Fast forward to 2016 now, and companies are being hit with ransoms in the thousands of dollars. So you really need to think, how long would it take you to restore your systems to pre-infection? And would that downtime, we were just looking at the cost per hour of downtime, right? So would that downtime be costlier or more disastrous than just paying the ransom? These are things to consider. Oops. So I wanted to launch a quick poll here. And you guys have heard a little bit from me, and I wanted to hear a bit from you. So this poll is simply asking, when it comes to ransomware, which of these is you? And A, yes, I've been a victim of ransomware. B, no, I haven't experienced this type of security breach. Or C, I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. So far we have 47% of you have voted. I'll give everyone a moment to answer. You've got 80% of you have voted so far, which is great. Last chance to participate if anyone else wants to reach forward and vote. Great. We have 80% of you have voted so far. So I'll go ahead and close that poll down and share the results. Some pretty interesting results here. You guys should be seeing A, yes, I've been a victim of ransomware. We have 25% of you who answered yes to A. So really curious to hear, what some of those stories were. Did you end up paying the ransom? Did you end up restoring to a previous backup? You can use the question tool and type some comments in and let us know, and we'll share that. B, no, I haven't experienced this type of security breach. We have 75% of you have answered no. And then C, nobody answered I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware, so that's great. That's good news because you're all here today because we do realize it is a really serious problem. So let me go ahead and hide these results and then jump back into the slides. So you should be seeing the slides again here in just 1 minute. Great. All right, so what we're looking at now here, our mission at InfraScale is to eradicate downtime and data loss. And hopefully this is your mission too. You know, it's a very simple mission. We hope that you're here because you also agree. We obviously can't eliminate the causes of downtime, but we aim to eliminate the pain that a business experiences in the event of any outage or in the event of a ransomware attack. So what we found in some of those stats and those trends that we were looking at earlier is that on-demand failover is really outside the reach of most businesses, and it leaves them ill-equipped to respond to outages, to respond to ransomware. So at this point, what we want to look at are some of those reasons and what you can actually do if you have one of those ransomware attacks or if you have an outage to get you a set of best practices. So first, of course, you can roll back from a previous backup. These are a couple of screenshots from my backup and recovery account with InfraScale. And by default, InfraScale keeps everything forever. So that's really, really important to know that I have every version of any file ever backed up. So if I were to experience any type of outage, I could recover my useful files and keep working. So that's a really, really important point. So since ransomware we've seen can take weeks or months to get into your system discreetly, it's not really the idea of having any backup system in place, but you do need a system with that forever archiving component built right into it. And of course, we are going to talk about a few other solutions coming up here. But my InfraScale account isn't just the file and folder backup, and it's not just the software that's on my machine. So here is my InfraScale dashboard. It's a quick snapshot here to just show you it's a unified management console. I can view activity alerts. I can see reporting, monitoring. I can monitor account usage and even control remote deployments. So from the dashboard, I can use an MSI to deploy anywhere in the world. Now, this is one particular screen from within my dashboard. It's the account level details. So I have this analytics tab of the last 24 hours, last 30 days, or a calendar view, and I can see which machine within my dashboard has the most changes. Now, what we already know about ransomware is that it goes through your system and modifies any file that it touches. So if it's a file that we're backing up, it's going to be recognized as a changed file. So what we did is we took all of these analytics and we created a brand new monitoring alert. And this alert we're calling anomaly detection. So if you have a large number of newly modified files, you want to know what type of event happened and what's touching my data. So an average backup of changed files will just continue as normal, but an unusually large backup is going to trigger an anomaly alert to the admin. And then you'll know, okay, this is something I need to investigate. What's happening here, and could it be ransomware? So let's take a closer look at anomaly detection. Let's see it in action in the dashboard. So this is a really quick video to just see how to set up an anomaly warning. So in my dashboard, I would just go up to settings and then click on monitoring. Then in the monitoring page, I see the enable anomaly detection setting right here at the bottom. So here I can set the threshold, and then a warning is released when that threshold's passed. So the way that it works here, anomaly detection is calculating a rolling average number of modified files over time. And then if the modified file count for a backup passes this predetermined threshold that you set, will release the warning. And then if you're subscribing to error events, you'll get an email alert, and then it also automatically appears in the general monitoring page. So you can come here, you can see more info, you can open the details and see things like backup duration, total files processed, how many files were modified. You can also download the logs by selecting the Manage action, and then you can investigate at a file level if you need to. So typically what we see is users back up 5 to 10 modified files per day. Anything 3 to 4 times that is going to be cause for an investigation. And this is really critical because nobody has proactive alerting. None of the BDR solutions out there today have this type of warning. So when someone gets infected with ransomware, really they're just scrambling and quickly trying to either pay a ransom, roll back to a previous date. But this proactive warning is really critical because then not only do you minimize the amount of data lost, but you'll actually minimize the amount of time that it takes to get back up and running as well. So again, we know that we can't completely eradicate downtime and data loss, but again, we're looking to minimize the pain that any company experiences in the event of an outage or ransomware. Now, what if just rolling back to a previous backup isn't enough? What if you need something faster and you don't want to risk losing the days of data that could have been affected by ransomware? Well, that's where DRAS comes in, Disaster Recovery as a Service. So it lets you quickly fail over your systems, and it supports DR2B on demand. So here is a scenario where we have these end users working along as normal, and unknown to them, they're about to experience a ransomware attack or any type of outage or natural disaster. So when this happens, with on-demand failover, you can simply log in from any browser and you can get access to the InfraScale dashboard, even if it's a laptop, a tablet, or just a smartphone. You can log in from anywhere and you can recover and virtualize a clean version of the entire environment. So not just files and folders, but servers, applications. You can have all of the users keep working, and everything here happens in guaranteed 15 minutes or less. So let's take a closer look at this, and let's just see a more detailed way to look at how it actually works. So on the left, here's the traditional backup flow. You have your production box and a backup server next to it, and then it's copying data to some storage. So it could be tape backup, like we saw on the earlier slide, where you have those trade-offs between tape, cloud, appliance-based DR. It could be copying to on-prem disk. It could be copying to the cloud. So any offsite storage. And then it's simply copying data over so that when a disaster happens, you need to copy that data back out of storage. And then you need to reconfigure and reboot, and this all takes a lot of time, especially if you're using tape backup. The recovery here is going to take days. But with DRAS, it's very, very different. So on the right, if we take a look at on-demand DR, we don't want to have to copy everything twice or more, moving data back and forth. We simply want to spin up a working environment where that data is. So we can just virtually create the machines on the fly, reconstruct your entire data center infrastructure right where your data is sitting. And that's how we can guarantee it to happen in 15 minutes or less. Now, I have one more poll here that I want to launch for everyone. So you should see this second poll pop up on your screen here, asking, when it comes to BDR, which of these is you? A, I can confidently roll back to a previous backup within 15 minutes. B, I wish I had backup and disaster recovery, but I just can't afford it. Or C, I still don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. We've got 25% of you have voted. If you want to reach forward and participate in this poll, we'd love to share the results from everyone. And right now we have a tie at 50-50 between A and B. So let's get a few more votes in here and break that tie. All right, let's go ahead and close these poll results then, and I'll share the results with everyone. So right now we have A, 50% said, I can confidently roll back to a previous backup within 15 minutes. And that's great. Can you confidently roll back within 5 minutes? Curious to hear from you guys in that questions and comments tool. 38% said, I wish I had backup in disaster recovery, but simply can't afford it. So we are going to talk about that in a minute. And then 13% said, I still don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. And I'm really curious to hear from those of you who answered C. What type of environment do you have that you don't think you'll be affected by ransomware? Really curious there. So would love to hear from you guys. Let's go ahead and close the poll down and then get back into the presentation here. Great, so what we're looking at now, we'll take a look at the top 5 BDR must-haves. Again, we can't completely prevent disasters or ransomware from ever occurring, but we can mitigate the pain and the disruption. And we equip every company with the ability to quickly and affordably recover from any disaster, large or small. So let's take a look at those 5 steps in keeping your data safe and protected. So first is to avoid reserved infrastructure. So here's why. What we just saw in those trade-offs is that some solutions can achieve the recovery time that we want, but they just simply don't achieve the cost that we want. And so this is why. Here on the left, you see how most DR solutions are architected, like we were just looking at. You have the production site, it replicates to the failover site, and because of the bandwidth, the people, and the software involved, it can really cost up to 3 times as much to set up a proper DR solution. And then, on top of the expense to implement, it's complex to test it and to use it. It's vulnerable to hackers because it doesn't have security built right in, and we just saw those RPO and RTO trade-offs that it has. So you want to avoid reserved infrastructure, but you still want on-demand failover. Well, what InfraScale can deliver is that price point of a backup solution, but we can deliver on-demand failover. And we'll talk about that in a minute here. Now, second is to avoid hardware-heavy solutions. So you can really easily do this by finding a vendor with cloud spillover. And this scenario is going to sound really familiar to a lot of you if you take a look at the left, where more space equals more appliance. So you buy an appliance, you end up filling that up as your data grows, and then you buy another one, fill that up, buy another one, fill that up, and really continue this cycle. It's really the old way of doing things, though. Look at how expensive that becomes for you and how quickly those dollar signs are racking up. So what if you could buy the last hardware appliance that you'd ever need, just a slim rack mount unit, a 1U unit? You could send it 1 terabyte or you could send it 100 terabytes, and it didn't make a difference. Well, we can do that by utilizing cloud spillover technology. So we're intelligently spilling data over to the cloud based on the policies that you set regarding the age and the value of the data. So this is actually something that Gartner mentioned. When they named us a cool vendor in business continuity and disaster recovery, they quoted saying, InfraScale says when you need more space, get a bigger cloud, not a bigger appliance. So you should definitely be using cloud spillover for your growing data. All right, third is we want to have it designed end-to-end. You need a solution that can back up any device, and that includes servers, both physical and virtual servers, desktops, laptops, mobile devices. We even include geolocate and remote wipe. You also want support for any OS. So not just Windows, but Linux, Unix, VMware, and Hyper-V. You want to be able to deploy it in any form, and this is really the type of form factor. So it includes physical appliances, virtual appliances, or agent-level backups as well. And then storage in any cloud. So you should have the flexibility of storing your data in the vendor's cloud, your own private cloud, or even third-party clouds like AWS or Windows Azure. And then you want to be able to recover anything. So we allow you to recover anything from an entire database server all the way down to mailbox level. You can preview each message for search and recovery if needed with EGR. And then boot anywhere. So we discussed on an earlier slide, you want the ability to boot on the appliance or in the cloud, and then to fail back any systems as well. So really, InfraScale is letting you protect all your data from mobile devices to desktops, laptops, physical or virtual servers, and we support over 100 versions of the most popular operating systems. And then that brings us to number 4, prioritize recovery and testing. Now, this is another example that we can sort of use an old way and new way. So think about what you would have to do. Imagine it's, say, Saturday at 2 a.m. and you experience an outage, or maybe that's when the ransomware attack kicks in. So you'd have to get up out of bed, go to your car, drive to the data center, and start recovering from backups. But now imagine this. You could just grab your iPad from the nightstand, and you could bring back 200 servers in the right order within 15 minutes, guaranteed. And now, of course, most of the time it takes maybe 60 to 90 seconds, but we do guarantee that 15-minute failover. And same with testing. Testing used to be such a hassle. You'd only do it once a year. But imagine to be able to test every day, ensure all the policies that you've set are working exactly as you expect them to work. Now that brings us to the 5th and last step here is don't ignore data security or privacy. So really pay attention to privacy and encryption. So rather than other solutions that take raw files and send them to the cloud, InfraScale uses a military-grade double-blind encryption system. This is really the best practice in comparison to any other solutions out there. So it's encryption locally, in transit, and at rest. And this really, really ensures that the data is secure. Okay, so that brings us through the 5 steps, but how much does this cost? So next we're going to talk about pricing. And as I mentioned earlier, InfraScale delivers on-demand cloud-backed DR as a service for the price of mere backup. And we guarantee that 15-minute failover, which nobody else can offer. So let's take a look at how we actually do that. Well, we do this with intelligent software using built-in deduplication, compression, and WAN acceleration technologies. We've eliminated costly hardware. We have a single 1U DR appliance that can scale from 1 terabyte to over 100 terabytes, and those go all the way up to 9U units. And you can bolt an unlimited amount of cloud space for long-term storage and for archiving. And again, that's using intelligent cloud spillover like we just saw. So pricing with InfraScale lets you save up to 70% in comparison to others. It's just a low monthly subscription. It's all based on the number of terabytes protected, and you only pay for what you protect. So here's a more detailed way to look at it. This chart helps summarize all of the key criteria that we think you should look at when comparing solutions. So is it affordable? Does it offer cloud spillover? Do you have complete coverage? And do you have that push button failover? And then does it have the encryption and security requirements that you need, especially if you have to comply with government regulations like HIPAA, PCI, Sarbanes-Oxley, CJIS, and many more. And then finally, the recovery time objective and recovery point objective that you need, and then the cost. So if you're looking for an affordable solution, there's really not much competition based on all of these competitive analysis that we've done. And we're happy to share this with you, of course, as well. So if you are looking at more specifics on pricing, we can definitely take a look at your environment and how much data you have to protect to give you an accurate quote. But with that all in mind, the next steps for everyone joining us today, I want to make sure that all of you on the line can eradicate downtime and data loss. And your number one solution is on-demand cloud failover. So I'd like to offer it free for 60 days for you to test it out for yourself. And if you want to take advantage of this offer, all you have to do is type 60 days free into that question tool, and then we'll go ahead and get you started with that. So keeping in mind here, Infoscale gives you two great solutions, not only for ransomware, but for any type of outage or disaster, without having to sacrifice any critical data, pay any ridiculously high ransoms, or lose profits due to downtime. So our customers have paid nothing in ransomware, $0 total. And so we'd love to offer and extend this 60 days free to all of you who are here on the line today. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Brian, one of our senior sales engineers, and he's going to get the Q&A started. And then while we go through that Q&A, I also have one last poll that I'm going to launch. So I just launched that last poll. Would love to have everyone participate in that. And then with that, I'll pass it over to Brian.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going through the questions. I see a few people have typed in 60-day free, so that's good to see. Some of the questions that we have in right now are some pretty basic ones. Obviously, one of the big questions, since this is a ransomware-focused webinar, is can antivirus stop ransomware? And actually, one individual did provide some of his own kind of insight on that. He said that he actually encountered a ransomware attack, but he wasn't sure if it was low-grade ransomware or if it just wasn't a very effective infiltration. But it came through an attachment, and his antivirus actually stopped it. So the thing that I always like to say is that as long as your virus definitions are up to date, you can usually stop infections that are trying to force their way in. However, occasionally, when you get a mysterious attachment through email and you download it, that basically kind of gives that infection a golden ticket through your antivirus. You've given it permission to begin its infection, basically. So antivirus can protect you to an extent, as was the experience of one of the individuals in the chat group here, but it's not always going to be something that will protect you. How does your virtual machine backup work? What hypervisors do you support? So one of the things that I saw was a question about hypervisor support. We support VMware and Hyper-V directly. So that means that VMware, we can use the vStorage API for agentless backup. For Hyper-V, we can install an agent and allow for backup of the virtual machines that way as well. So what that means is that you can offer agentless backup for those particular hypervisors, and then for hypervisors outside of that scope, we would suggest agent-based protection. Now that applies to the DRaaS product. The direct-to-cloud product, which was also discussed, that only supports agent-based protection. It's an agent push model, so it's not going to support agentless in the direct-to-cloud model, but the DRaaS model does. What is the overhead of the boot feature offered? So one of the things that was talked about is the boot feature that is available within the product. And that boot feature specifically is how to get a machine up and running very quickly, as Carla was talking about that 15-minute guarantee. So basically the way that works is actually booting within the DRAS model from our deduplication store and our repository, and it actually has no effect on your storage at all. It only requires the RAM and processor resources that you would assign. So the overhead is what you want it to be, basically. To a certain extent, obviously, if you have a very high change rate machine, it could outpace the disks that are part of our repository, but most of the time, if you're running in a failover scenario, you're expecting at least some loss in performance. What is the target RPO that your product can achieve? Both products can be scheduled to be as frequent as hourly. The DRAS product can be scheduled to be more frequent than that. I believe we can get down to about a 15-minute recovery point objective. Another question was, do we comply with HIPAA? Yes, we do. We allow for certain encryption as well as certain aspects of our product in terms of retention and things like that that allow us to meet HIPAA compliance. Where are your data centers? So for the direct-to-cloud product, there's 15 of them worldwide. I believe there's 3 or 4 in the United States, 1 in Canada, 1 or 2 in Europe, 1 in South Africa, 1 in Australia, and 1 or 2 in Asia. So basically every continent except Antarctica. So our data centers are everywhere. And then for our failover data centers for the DRAS product, those are currently localized to the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. However, with the AnyCloud capability, you can also target things like Amazon and Microsoft Azure as well. That's most of the questions that I've seen come in so far. Let's see if anything else comes in. Please feel free to type those questions into the chat box and keep them coming so we can get everything answered. All right, one folk asks about replication. They wonder what kind of bandwidth is required for replication and things like that. So replication is really kind of something where you kind of have to initially answer it depends. But one thing that we can say with some certainty is that replication can work over pretty much any connection you throw at us as long as it's not like dial-up. Our product can be bandwidth throttled, so obviously if you have a limited connection or if you want to limit the connection of the device, you certainly can. Another big thing, though, is that we actually have our own proprietary replication model within the DRAS product. And what that proprietary replication model allows us to do is actually use a different replication model than other backup products. It's something that we've actually custom built. Some folks say it works very similar to a WAN acceleration tool. Basically what it does is rather than relying on having to read the repository and determining what to replicate, instead what we do is we constantly keep a block map updated with our backups, so we already know what to replicate ahead of time. So oftentimes with our DRAS product, you can see WAN acceleration statistics as high as 50 or 60 times above what your base connection is. So our efficiency in terms of replication means that you can operate over extremely small connections. I could even go so far as to say something as small, say a bonded T1, and not experience much in the way of performance dampening. Another question, although a little sales-oriented, what do you charge? Are there add-ons? How is the product sold? So just at a really high level, it's sold per terabyte no matter which model you go with. And that includes everything. So there's no add-ons. The only add-on that I can think of would be the exchange granular recovery utility costs a separate fee, but other than that, everything else is included. And that exchange granular recovery is only for message level recovery. We can natively do mailbox recovery through our user interface. Do we have to use your cloud? No, you don't have to. As previously mentioned, you could use public clouds, such as Amazon and Azure. Or, of course, you can always purchase the appliances, primary and secondary, and set up your own DR configuration. So that way, if you have your own DR site already in place and you don't want to go to the cloud, maybe you aren't as trustworthy with the cloud as others may be, then you can certainly set up your own private primary to secondary replication process. Someone asked about deduplication rates. Deduplication rates, but for both products, the DRaaS product as well as the direct-to-cloud product, it is actually global deduplication. So what that means is that everything that is backed up is going to be deduplicated against itself, especially with the appliance, because the appliance being versatile enough to not only, it's going more towards heterogeneous environments like physical and virtual mixes and multiple operating systems and things like that. But the great thing is it can actually deduplicate across all of that because it does it at the block level. So as it brings new data in, those blocks are constantly being checked to make sure that everything is deduplicated against everything, which gives the maximum storage savings. The way the direct-to-cloud product is going to give you storage savings is the fact that while it's also operating on change block tracking and making sure that no redundant data is sent up to the cloud, it's basically calculating your total space based on the largest file size that exists. So if you originally back up a 10 meg file and that file is slowly growing over time, as the file gets larger, you're not charged for the individual versions of the file, you're charged for the overall total size of the file. So at the end of the day, when that file is 15 megs, that's all you're being charged for rather than the 10 megs plus all the individual changes that brought it to that point. So it makes things a little bit simpler because, again, that deduplication is also saving you money as well. And Carla, I know we're getting close to the end of the hour. That's all the questions that I've seen so far, but I'll keep the line open in case any more questions come in.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Brian, for being here and answering all the questions that came through. And everyone on the line today, thank you so much for being here. We are going to be following up with those of you. I saw lots of the comments coming through 60 days free, so keep an eye out on your email to hear more from me on that. Thank you for your time, and we very much look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.